All right, let's bring her in. You saw her first on Jason Mesnick's season of The Bachelor. Then this past Monday, when Jenn's season of The Bachelorette visited Seattle, it is Molly Mesnick. Molly, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you? It's been a long time since we've talked.
I was going to say, it was pre-COVID, right? Or did I have you guys on during COVID?
I don't remember. I don't know.
It's at least 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Either way, great to have you on. When I saw they were coming to Seattle this year, I'm like, I gotta believe they're going to include Jason and Molly somehow. And then the Wicked date was the first date of Jenn's whole season because they were in New Zealand and Australia. Nothing got spoiled online because I guess the Australians and New Zealanders didn't think to contact me. But
right.
but see, anytime they're in a U.S. city, it's almost impossible for them to keep it under wraps. And that one they asked the crowd to come out to for the Wicked date. So knew it was going to get out, but it's interesting. Before we get into that, before we get into the radio date, I heard you talk about this and I wanted to bring it up, the full circle moment that you had on this show on Monday, because when you were on Jason's season, you guys had the same exact radio date for the most part, right?
Same exact date. When they called and told Jason, they brought it up. They're like, we're thinking of doing this radio date where the guys come in and they're on a show. We've done it in seasons past. And Jason's like, yeah, you did it on ours.
And then not only that, I mean, you weren't even thinking, I don't think, about a radio career at that point.
No, not at all.
Yeah. Never. And then after that happens, you dive into radio, you end up doing a radio show with Bender. And then here you are back there on a radio show with Bender. I mean, it's got to be kind of surreal for you.
I know it is so crazy. Yeah. So when we did our date, back decades ago, Bender was hosting the date. I didn't know who he was. That's the first time, obviously, I'd ever met him because I'd never been to Seattle before. Yeah. So then when Jason and I got together and I moved out to Seattle, he would have me fill in on the morning show from time to time, just as a notable face, I guess. And so then when he needed a new co-host, he called me and he's like, do you want to join the show with me? And I never I have no radio experience whatsoever, but I ended up being at that station for 7 years.
How many of those 7 years did you have? Was Riley around? Was it
all of it?
Oh, so she had already been born when you were in radio.
When I started doing the radio show. Yeah.
Okay. Now, was that difficult for when she was 1 to be in? Because you were on the morning show, so I'm guessing you were up at 4 or 5 in the morning every day.
4 a.m. That's actually a big reason why we never had any more kids. Honestly, Riley was an angel baby. I would have had 1,000 more kids if they were like her. But when it was she was getting to be 2 and 3, where you think about having another kid, I was like, this is really complicated. I get up so early. Jason works full time. How is he going to handle getting 3 kids? I don't know. It just made it complicated. So I was like, let's wait. And then it got to the point where Riley's grabbing her own snacks and she's not in diapers anymore. And I'm like, I am not starting over. This is a good way of life now.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, even though he wasn't in the episode, excuse me, was on Jason's season, we got to obviously meet his son, Ty, and we just followed him throughout the years on social media. When did Ty become 7 feet tall?
He's a giant.
How tall is he? Legit.
He's 6'5".
Oh, geez. I thought he was 6'8", but still 6'5" is tall.
He's 6'5". He dwarfs us. Yeah. His mom's side of the family is really tall. So it obviously doesn't come from Jason. But yeah, he is a giant. Yeah.
And he goes to Boise State, right?
He goes to Boise. He's leaving Boise.
Oh, he is.
He didn't love his first year there. So he's going to transfer into UW, University of Washington.
Oh, so does he start soon? Start in a couple weeks?
Late. They're quarters. So they start late September.
Oh, geez. Late September. Okay.
Yeah. It's funny. The college thing is funny. You're so sad when they leave. And then he came back for the summer. And I was like, oh, boy, we got used to you not being here. Yeah. Now it's messy. It's loud. There's teenage boys over all the time. Yeah, it's crazy.
What was the deal with Boise? Was it just a homesickness thing, or he really just didn't get?
He just didn't they don't have a big Greek system as far as fraternities and sororities, and so he didn't join one. And he's seeing all of his friends at every other college being in fraternities and just busy all the time with plans and parties and all that kind of stuff all the time. So I think he was feeling a little jealous, and bored. I think he just wanted more of a social scene. So that's what he's doing.
Did he, when he goes to Washington, is he living in the dorms or do they have an off-campus apartment with
He's gonna
friends?
live in the fraternity. He's already joined a fraternity. They recruit really early. So
I didn't realize they did it this early. I thought they
yeah,
were in school.
yeah,
Okay.
he's already in the frat. So he's moving in beginning of September.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So the other thing that happened off screen, and this was kind of funny because you mentioned it on your Instagram, and I think you mentioned it when you went on Ben and Ashley this week, was the fact that Riley's never watched the show until last season. She watched Joey's season. So that was her first.
Watch the full season. She like would see
come
an
in and out
or two or some clips, but that's literally the first time she's seen any sort of episode of the show.
So then when Charity and Kelsey and Daisy are invited to be on this date, they're hanging out in her room, and they came over to your house for a dinner and drinks and stuff like that. Yeah. And Riley was awestruck. Was she just like in heaven?
She doesn't think of us as like these people from TV, right?
Yeah.
So to have people, and the funny thing is she knew Charity too, because she doesn't watch Dancing with the Stars, but they did one episode that was like Taylor Swift themed.
Yeah.
And so she watched that. So she had also just seen Charity on TV. And so it like blew her mind that these girls she just saw on TV are in her house.
Has she seen your season yet or no?
She has zero desire.
She doesn't even want to watch it?
No. I mean, think about it. Like, do you really want to see your dad kissing a bunch of other girls?
No, I guess not.
No, I mean, she doesn't even want to see me kiss Jason. I don't know. I mean, I she's older, she will, but she's not there yet. She's not there yet.
Yeah, because I remember when you did, like, you were kind of doing lives on Instagram with her, or not lives, but posting videos, and you would ask her about it, the episode, and Joey kissing a bunch of women. I think that was her ick was.
That's ick to her right now.
Yeah, that's ick. Everything's ick. Okay, so let's talk about Monday's episode, because it's obviously getting a lot of traction, and obviously you guys were part of the radio date, so you got to meet 5 of the men, and the whole thing with Sam, which is obviously taken off on the internet, and I know you can't get into details about what happened, because apparently you had said on another podcast there was something that happened that was even worse than anything you saw, but I don't want to get into it. You don't have to get into it, but was it just give us the gist of, it was just something he said that was just as cringe as some of the other stuff we saw?
That should never see the light of day.
Yeah. And when he said that, you guys were watching the whole conversation. Obviously it lasted longer than the few minutes that we saw. When you're watching it, were you able to step in and say something, or you just let them go and you guys just watched?
Okay. So when they had alone time, Jenn and Sam, it was actually just Jason and I in the room. Jubal and Bender were not in the room. He would ramble so much. Like, we had an earpiece in, and the producers are like, you got to cut him off and like move on to the next question. And that happened multiple times, because he just keeps going and going and going, which is why my take on it is that he's just a nervous talker. You know, I don't know. I'm curious what you think about all this.
Well, the problem with Sam is, I don't know if you were aware of what happened probably after episodes 1 or 2, is he immediately, and also his family, and not just one family member, 2 sisters, a brother, a brother-in-law, and both his mother and father took to social media and blamed the editing on the show and saying, you're not seeing the full story. Basically, our son is not how the way he's being portrayed. You're not seeing the context of all these conversations, because in the early episodes, it's, Sam was being basically painted as the villain for things that he was saying, and constantly going after Devin, and constantly talking about how he doesn't like Devin, and Devin gets under his skin. But it got to be a bit too much with his family taking to social media and basically insulting the show and saying, these people are evil. This isn't the way my son is. And then there's that happy medium, because Jenn went on a podcast, I think it was either Chicks in the Office or something, and said, like, they asked her, like, I'm sure you're aware of Sam's family defending him on social media. She's like, yeah. And I think what he needs to do is take responsibility for what he says and his actions. So clearly they're not on the same page. And with Men Tell All taping today, I'm really curious to see how that conversation goes, because they haven't seen each other, I'm assuming, or spoken since Seattle.
I mean, you know this. You've been following the show for so long. It's so tricky. The environment's hard, you know, and not everyone handles it well. for his family, I just feel for his family. That's really hard to sit back and watch someone you love get just destroyed by the internet. So I think they're probably just being protective of him. Maybe
For
it's
sure.
backfiring a little bit because they look like they're being defensive.
Yeah.
But I feel for him. That's really hard. That's really hard.
Yeah, it is. It is a happy medium, and there's just, I mean, you saw it on Monday, and it's not like the people who have the take of, man, this guy just seems to be talking in memes or Bible scripture or quotes he's seen in a movie. Everybody thinks it. And then when he pulled out the I love you card when he's talking to her later on, it was like, we all had the same reaction as Jen. Like, what?
Like,
Where's this coming from?
I know. I mean, it was interesting. They set us up before the date really saying like Sam is it. She is obsessed with him. And I don't feel like that is how they've made the show look up until this point. So watching it has been really surprising. I'm like, where's this, crazy love for Sam? I'm not seeing it. So I don't know.
Physically, it's been Sam. But it's every conversation between them has been pretty surface level. They haven't really dug deep into much. So I can see why producers said that. Like, yeah, she's definitely into him. And it's almost like she wanted him to be in that Final Four. She wanted him to possibly be the final guy. And he just couldn't get there because he spoke. It's like he said a lot without saying a lot.
I mean, that's exactly what it is. He talked nonstop, but like there was no like substance to what he was saying. And I'm really proud of Jenn for speaking up and being like, but why? But why? But why? Like she needed to do that, which was really good.
And we usually don't get that from the leads. No. Usually they just take it as like, oh, thank you. Appreciate that. And almost fall for it. But yeah, he really was talking in circles and saying it was, like everybody said, it's kind of word salad. It's really what it was. Just a bunch of words.
And obviously is when he's like, I didn't think it was going to be you. I thought it was going to be, I was like, oh my God.
Where did that come from? Why did he, did she ask him? Did we only see that answer? Like, what was the question that led to that? Or was that just in the middle of one of his rambles?
That was literally how it went. Like, there was nothing extra that you didn't see that was cut off. Like, that is how he answered the question.
Well, I can't even remember what the question was.
He was asking, like, why do you see yourself with me or something like that? And he started off with like, I didn't think it was going to be you. I think what he was trying to say is like, I didn't think it was going to be you. And I'm pleasantly surprised with how I'm feeling about you.
It just didn't come out that way.
No, not at all.
Well, it really is. Obviously, we know that it's a very heightened environment. He and his family have not handled it well. Now, they were very vocal for about a week, and then they have basically been shut down because I'm assuming the show told him, look, man, you can't be saying this. You can't be talking about things that did not air. And clearly anything that your family is saying, you told them when you got home, which is pretty much a violation of your contract. So just pipe down, everybody. And
he goes into the mental hall tonight and like, I don't know, doesn't come off super defensive. I think that's when you ultimately look bad. When you just go in and you're like, you know what, I screwed up. I didn't handle it well. Then you ingratiate yourself a little bit more. So I don't know. We'll see. We were supposed to be there tonight and we couldn't go. So
yeah, it's one of these, like, it's exactly what he needs to do. Even seeing 2 seconds after the episode ended, he filmed a video that he released on his Instagram.
Okay, I didn't see it. Was he apologetic?
I wouldn't call it apologetic, but he was just like, thank you for all those who've supported me, even though he's been getting crucified online. He only addressed the people that have been fans, and he said it was a very tough environment. I learned a lot. But he didn't throw any sort of really apology towards Jenn. Or I think what he should do at the tell-all taping, and just paraphrasing here, but just throw out the phrases of emotions got the best of me, heightened environment. I watched it back and I realized that's not me.
Yeah.
I apologize for the way I came across. Watching myself back, I see it now, how it could be off-putting to the audience. And I hope this journey, I hope I didn't ruin your journey, Jenn. And I hope things go better. No hard feelings. Just something like that. Something tells me though,
forgive him and get over it and move on.
Yeah. It's just something tells me though, he's not going to do that. He's going to stay defensive. I don't know. He was so adamant about, for the first couple of weeks before it looks like production stepped in and told him, look, you can't do this. Just so adamant about it's the edit and you're not seeing the full context. And it's like, look, I get it. I'm very well aware. And there were plenty of scenes early on in the season where I could tell it was a voiceover and they were even using stuff that he had said. So I just started focusing on the stuff where we saw him in an ITM, we see his face and we see his mouth move. And there were plenty of instances where he said things you're just like, no, I can call you out for that because.
Well, I mean, and I can sit here and say, being in that room that whole date, there was no funny editing done at all. Like honestly, there was so much more that you guys didn't see, if anything. So
how long was the talk with Jenn that you guys sat in on?
The two of them probably sat there for 30 minutes, maybe 30, 45 minutes.
And we got 5.
You got not even. Their talk was probably 2 minutes that you guys saw. Yeah.
And it was just Jenn firing questions at him and him.
We gave them both cards with questions to ask each other. And so they were trying to go through the cards, but his answers would go on for so long that they're like, Molly, stop him. Like, move on to the next question. So we'd try.
I don't even think we ever saw Sam ask her a question. Obviously, that's the part that was edited out. It was all Jenn's questions to him, right?
Yeah. But I did see, and like this is where Jason and I got in an argument on Ben's podcast the other day. I saw her light bulb go off. I literally saw it in her face. I saw her face drop where she realizes, like, this guy is not giving me what I want.
Do you remember what question it was or what answer he had said?
Just while he's going and going and going and going, and she's asking, but tell me why. Like, what specifically do you like about me? You know, and he couldn't articulate it.
And he couldn't do it later on that night during the group date after party. It was just very, very difficult for him.
Yeah, it's been interesting. Like, I never watched The Bachelorette. I mean, I haven't watched the show in 10 years, but like, I never watched The Bachelorette. I think there's like maybe Jillian's season I watched.
Yeah.
And I always think like, oh, because it's so boring. There's not a lot of drama. This season has been crazy.
Yeah. No, it's been interesting. And obviously Sam has been the focal point that everybody has a comment about every single week, because it's always something that he is saying, him repeating the phrase, I keep the main thing. And, you know, Devin, your name's not even in my mouth yet. That's all we hear him talking about all season. It's a bit much. Has Riley, has she been watching this season up till that date?
Oh yeah. She's all in. She is just loving the season. Her favorite from day one has been Grant. She is obsessed with him.
Wow.
So she came home the other night after they announced it. I'm like, I should have recorded it. She lost her mind. She's like, I have to go on the show. I love Grant.
Well, that was the next thing I wanted to get to. So we covered enough about Sam. So there were obviously 4 other guys on the date. How long was your interaction with the other 4 guys?
I mean, we filmed from 11 a.m. until 7 p.m.
Wow.
So 8 hours. So we did a lot of stuff. We got answers out of every guy. We played little games. We had listeners call in and ask questions. They cut all of that out to focus on Sam stuff. So
yeah, that was the thing that had gotten released on, I think, their website, bachelornation.com. Is first off, they asked the group date for the day before, the wicked date, hey, come out and join us. And then for that date, they said we'll need people for quote unquote a radio show or a call-in aspect. And so, yeah, it was known that date was going to be radio show, but obviously it never got, you guys were in the studio, no pictures ever got out. But yeah, I was wondering, wait a second, I thought they took calls for this, but so they did. It just
didn't air. It's a tricky date because, most of the time when they do group dates and you're having to like do something, it's all in jest, right? You're performing, you're doing a comedy show, you're dancing, you're singing, whatever. This was a date where they truly had to answer real questions about their real feelings with their peers in the room. It's awkward. It's awkward for everyone. And everyone's trying to say the better answer, So I felt for those guys. That's not a fun situation to be in, but they all handled it very, very, very well, minus Sam.
Yeah. Well, did you get alone time with each of the other 4, or was it all in a group setting?
All in the group setting.
Except for Sam. Okay. Yeah.
So
what were your thoughts on the other 4 men? And then we'll save Grant for last. Obviously, we know he's the next Bachelor now, and just your thoughts on him. But, go through between, what was it, Devin, Spencer, and Jonathan.
Devin, Spencer, Jonathan. Yeah. So Spencer, he was just as he is on the show. He's like quiet and polished and put together. I don't have anything negative to say about him. Like I think probably the reason maybe he got sent home is he's just quiet and reserved, and maybe he didn't like give enough energy towards her because she is a spitfire, right?
Yeah.
Like she's got so much energy. Jonathan was far and away the most genuine from our perspective. Jason and I both walked away loving him. He just did a really good job of speaking to Jen, not to us. And his answers felt real and not like contrived to make himself look better than the other guys in the room. He also was really good about, like, we had time afterwards off camera, just, real quick to say, nice to meet you. And he was good about asking us questions, and that just shows his character. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
Devin, he's like he is on the show. He's just
loud.
Like, he's loud. He likes to be the center of attention. Yeah. He, at one point, I did look at him while we were filming and I'm like, you're a pretty smooth talker, buddy. But I think that's just how he is.
Yeah. No, I think he said it in his intro video in the first episode. Like, I'm loud. Yeah. I like to be the life of the party. Like, he has made it known. It's not like he popped up and all of a sudden did this and you're like, he's performing. Now, there is a part of me that is wondering, because of the battle with Sam all season, they obviously didn't like each other. They certainly did not get along. Devin has thrown shade at Sam all season on Instagram. Like, he's keeping it up. My thing is that I'm curious if this guy was out to be the winner and it was an ego thing to win The Bachelor, or he's truly, I'm not saying he doesn't like Jen at all. And it just, right. I want to win the whole thing, but how deep is it with their relationship? I mean, he told her all the right things. And when they had their one-on-one date, he was very open and honest about it. But it's like, yeah, because he was in this competition with Sam all season and Sam is saying, I don't understand how Jen can like this guy and also like me. You just wonder, did the competition part get to him and is he performing? You just don't know.
I think probably more so for guys. There's no way to avoid the competition thing, right? Guys are naturally super competitive. So I think that's probably always a factor for every guy. It's how they act on that. Yeah. So I think you bring up a great question. Is Devin super into her or not? It seems like he is. I think, time only tells with this kind of stuff. So
yeah. Yeah. Cause we all know that the real relationship starts once the cameras stop, because then you actually get to know the person and he's not having to be the center of attention on a group date or a one-on-one date and the cameras aren't on him and he doesn't gain anything by saying the right things or being the center of attention when there's no show anymore. So it's just like, okay, that's when you get to know him. So we'll be, it'll be interesting. I just don't know. I mean, it's hard to say.
We had a conversation about it, Jason and I, just like, I feel so, I don't know, like nervous and scared for leads these days, because there is that factor of like, is someone just coming on to get famous or gain Instagram followers? We never had to deal with that.
Yeah, you didn't.
So there's always other intentions of people these days. And how do you figure that out?
That's the problem. And it's the one that people ask me all the time, what would I change about the show? Because it's pretty much the same thing every season, just with a different cast. We have one-on-one dates, we have group dates, we have roses. It's the same thing. I think there should be an episode, and Alon, who used to be a producer on this show, went off and did other shows. When he did F-Boy Island, it was kind of the same thing. You have 3 leads and they're dating. But one of the episodes was the women got to look at the guys' Instagram pages, and then for the date that day, got to ask them about stuff that they saw. I think the show needs to embrace social media more within the filming of the show. Now, granted, it would be a complete ripoff if they did it now, because Alon already took it to another show, but I don't know if they could get away with that. But I think the lead should be able to do a kind of something like that. Like, hey, earlier today, I was able to scour all your Instagram pages and I just had some questions and I want to ask you that. Like, I think that could, but I don't think The Bachelor can do it.
No,
but it's
that's brilliant.
One change I would make. Yeah. and we know, I mean, everybody has spoken about what a great mind Alon had. Was he there for your season or no?
He didn't work on our season, but afterwards he came on the show and we saw him at a million things. Yeah.
So, okay. And then the final guy that you saw that you got to spend the time with was Grant. Mm-hmm. Again, he just seems like such a good dude. Like there's nothing to say bad about him.
No, he's handsome. He's articulate. He's successful. He's sweet. I mean, he's got everything. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. I think, And, granted, I think the biggest complaint people had about him being the Bachelor is just the way it was announced. All of a sudden it dropped after
odd. Like them doing it so early and just like randomly throwing it up online. It was weird, but
yeah. There was no Kimmel, it's no GMA, it's no after the final rose, let's bring them out so people can cheer. It was just, it breaks online and here's our Bachelor. It's like, okay, it's different. They've never done it this way, but it also gives them, according to Robert Mills, the reason they did it was because they want women to apply now, knowing who the Bachelor is. Because that's always been another thing about the show that I've always found totally bizarre, is that when women are going through the application process, they don't know who the Bachelor is, and they're not told who it is. So they're like, so now it's like, okay, I know I'm applying for Grant. You're late in the process, but they don't start filming for another 5 weeks, usually mid to end of September. So we're 5 weeks out. They can have some women apply, and they know they're applying.
I do kind of like that. It'll get girls there who are excited about him.
Yeah, for sure. And what was the thing I wanted to ask you about the radio date? When you had the radio date on your season, was that the one? And I think they showed us a clip. Was that the one where Jason was asked who's the best kisser and he said you?
Yeah. I was on that date with Jillian and
who else was on that date? Do you remember?
I think it was Jillian and Stephanie, I think.
It was only 3.
Oh God. I think so, because Melissa had a one-on-one date and Naomi had a one-on-one date. So I think it was just me, Jillian, and Stephanie.
Because that episode, Seattle, was the episode before Hometowns?
Yes.
Okay, so then, and we know there's 4 people at Hometown. So 5 would make sense. Do you remember some of the other questions? Did he ever answer anything else where you were the answer? Where he said Molly was the answer? Do you remember any of the questions?
No, I don't know.
Just the best kisser one.
Yeah.
You probably never let him live that down either.
No.
So. That's funny. Yeah. And because I remember, and I was just like, yeah, that's right. That happened on Jason's season, radio date. And here they are with the same guy. So you filmed in 08, right? And it aired in 09.
Yep.
So this was 16 years ago that you filmed.
I know. Riley saw that clip. She's like, why do you look like that? I'm like, well, I was quite a bit younger.
Oh my God, that's funny. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of all the time. Like, do you remember off the top of your head the times that you have been invited back to the show? What else have you guys done? I know you've done things, but what else have you done?
We came back on Jillian's season. Actually, this is funny. In my head the other day was trying to think, like, how much money have we made from being on TV? And I know it's a dumb exercise, but I was just curious. Yeah. And I mean, because back then you got paid for so many appearances, Yeah. So I kind of was going through it. Like, we were back on Jillian's season for the Men Tell All. We went and talked after the final rose with Emily Maynard and whatever her dude's name was, Brad.
Jeff. Oh, Brad's season or Emily's season?
Brad's season.
Yeah, when he chose Emily. Gotcha.
Yeah. We went to Paradise, the first season of Paradise.
Oh my God, I don't even remember that.
Yep. It was me, Catherine, Sean, Des, and Chris. The very first Paradise season.
Did Jason go?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's okay. 3 couples
or something.
Okay.
And then we went on Ari's season, obviously, when he did his little switcheroo.
Oh yeah. Well, obviously that made sense to bring you back for that.
Did
you ever do any date stuff within the season?
This was the first date we've ever hosted.
Okay. Yeah, I knew you guys had been back a lot, and I was just like, well, which ones have they been in?
Well, it's always on to all the weddings.
That's right. You were at Gary and Teresa's wedding, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I was so hesitant, Steve. I was like, because we hadn't done anything in so long, and I've really removed myself from this world. I stopped doing interviews. I started saying no to interviews right after COVID. I was just over it. And then, Jason's like, this might be fun. Some of our friends are going to be there. Like, the spotlight's not on us. We can just kind of stay in the back. And I ended up having a good time. And so luckily, because of that, I was more willing to say yes to going on this date. Had we not done the wedding, I don't know if I would have said yes. I just don't like the attention. I don't know.
What was the last thing you did before the wedding? Was it years ago?
Yeah. The last Bachelor thing we did was, it was Ari's season.
Yeah, and that was what, 2017, 2018, something like that?
We did during COVID, we did an interview with Andy Cohen. He did some show because there was no new TV.
Yeah.
And so he did a show of like the history of reality TV. So we did a big interview with him, and I just didn't like how it went. And I just felt icky and was just like, I'm sick of answering these questions. Like, Melissa's good. We're good. Everyone's moved on. Like, why are we rehashing this over and over and over again? And so I looked at Jason. I'm like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just like, it sucks because this happened in 2009, the whole switcheroo thing. It's like, here we are in 2024. But the problem is it was such a seminal moment in the franchise. It was front page of the tabloids as literally Jason at the time. And he's had many bachelors since that have passed him up. But at the time, like most hated man in America for what happened. It was awful. And I guilty as charged, contributed to that for some of my reporting back in the day. But it was just the idea of how can you do this? And then Melissa became America's sweetheart. Yeah. So it's like, it's like, why do we have to relive this? If it was 1 or 2 years later, sure. But in 2024,
I know
we have to talk about Jason's decision to change his mind. It's like, look, we've been married. Are you coming up on 10 years or have you hit 10
years almost?
Oh, that's right. Cause you got married later on that year. Oh, that's right.
10,
later on that year. So 15 years you've been married, you've got a child. Melissa's been married for a long time. She's got, I think 2, it's like,
I know.
I think people want to stick like some sort of wedge in there. And it's like, no, it's not like Melissa and I, you and Melissa talk and keep in touch, but it doesn't mean you don't like each other. It just means like we just go on our different paths.
Yeah, it's silly. But I will say, like, this filming experience was actually great. We had a ton of fun. We loved being a part of it. So we pick and choose. Obviously, they asked us to come to the mental all. They asked us to come to the AFR. It didn't fit in our life, and we weren't going to rearrange our life to be there. Yeah. So if it works for our life, we will go and we will do it. But, TV isn't our number one goal.
All right. Let's get to the stuff that I really wanted to talk about this podcast. Okay. So I'm so in the weeds for everything about It Ends With Us. Here's my background. I knew absolutely nothing other than I knew the general idea of the story was a relationship that had domestic violence involved.
Okay, so you didn't read the book?
No.
Okay.
But because I knew this movie was coming out this past weekend, and my job is to also cover things that people are talking about in pop culture, I wanted to be a part of the conversation and be able to contribute in some way, even without reading the book. And so that's all I knew. I did not know until after the movie that Justin directed it. Mm-hmm. I did not know about, I didn't even know the premise. I thought it was about a relationship between two people involving domestic violence. And in the movie, we were just going to see, does she stay or does she leave? I did not know about an atlas before that, all that stuff. But after the movie, I've done as much reading as I could, not of the book, but went on Wikipedia, read the plot of the book, and had articles already set up to read after I watched the movie of what differed from the book to the movie. So I knew the basic premise of it. So I want to ask you a couple things about it. Obviously, you read the book. When did you read it? Do you remember?
I read the book maybe beginning of the year. Beginning of the year. So, and her book, I just love Colleen Hoover. She's an amazing writer. Her books are easy reads. They're quick. She hooks you right out of the gate. So there's a sequel to this book.
Yeah. Oh, I've already read the plot for the sequel because I couldn't wait.
So I've read both books in 3 days. Like I couldn't put them down. Love them.
So you read it at the beginning of this year, probably because you knew the movie was coming out this summer. Yeah. You were like, I want to have a backstory on this. So here's a question. After you read the book and then you found out, or maybe you even knew before the book, because I'm assuming they had already finished filming the movie by January, and you knew that Blake Lively was playing Lily. Was that someone that you saw like, oh, I can totally see that? Or
no. And I think I read the book. Maybe it wasn't the beginning of this year. Maybe it was I read the book before she was cast.
Okay.
So I did not have her in my mind at all. But at first I was like, this isn't the girl I pictured. This isn't who I was thinking. But it when you watch the movie, it didn't bother me at all. She did a great job.
Yeah. And I thought, I did read after the fact that in the book, Lily's 23. And obviously
younger.
For the movie, they just kept it the ages, Justin's 40 and Blake is 36. Yeah. And I did read an interview with Justin, which I agree with, where he said, look, I didn't want to do a story about domestic violence involving a 23-year-old. I wanted it to be an older adult. So that made sense to me.
Yeah.
So your overall thing about book versus movie, obviously we know when you deal with a book being turned into a movie, unless the movie is released in 3 different parts or something like that, a book is just going to have way more details. It's just, you're going to be able to dive into more stuff. And,
for sure,
with that said, watching your Instagram story about it, you were very pleased with the movie, correct?
I mean, I've read plenty of books and then seen the movie and you're always disappointed. I walked out of this wanting to go right back in and see it again. Like they did such a good job keeping to the story in the book, and even with some of the small little details. And they did actually, this is why I want to go see it again, because I did notice a few background details that are a bigger detail in the book. And so they did a good job of like placing those things. It just, they did amazing. It was amazing.
From what I read, from what differed from the book to the movie, I think a lot of it was not all that big of a deal. Like, I understand in the book, the letters to Ellen DeGeneres played a major role. And in the movie and in reading an interview with both Colleen and the screenwriter for the movie, they just said, look, ultimately this movie isn't about Ellen. So we couldn't focus so much on that just due to time constraints. And it seemed like everything in the movie that was truncated was just strictly for time purposes. You just don't have that type of time to tell it, whereas you do in a book.
But I appreciated that they at least even put in a scene where she's watching Ellen, because then immediately you're like, oh yeah, this was a big part of the book,
Yeah. And I think seeing that and, kind of watching it play out. And then for me, there were a lot of, it was everything that I read, because there was a whole article that said what differs from the book to the movie. And there was a lot of things, but they were all small and not anything that changed the fabric of what this movie was about, that. And I think that's where they did a great job. One of the things that obviously is being discussed is, and I don't get this, and I don't think you do either. The biggest, I guess, problem that people are having, and I'm not even talking about the off screen, do these people even like each other? Colleen and Brandon and Blake have seemingly, unfollowed Justin, and he's just hired a crisis PR team. And I'm just like, wow. So here's my thing, just not even talking about that part, because we honestly don't know the truth. There's reports that he was misogynistic on set. He was verbally abusive. And then there's other stuff that's just like, in post-production, she wanted Ryan's editor to edit the movie, and he had his own editor, and they ended up going with Justin's, and that's why she's bitter. Who knows? My whole thing is about the whole idea surrounding domestic violence, and some people are saying that this movie, or the story itself, I guess in particular the movie, romanticizes or glorifies domestic violence. I'm just like,
not at all.
Not at all. Like, what are these people watching? I mean, if Lily in the movie, if they changed the whole movie and Lily in the movie, sorry, spoiler here. I mean, we're going to talk about it. There's no way to talk about this without being spoiler, not going into spoilers. But if that would have continued happening in the movie and she ultimately ends up staying with him, then I think we could have a problem with it. But that's not what happens.
I think they did a good job of giving a realistic take on it. Like, she doesn't leave after the first time. She doesn't leave after the second. That's probably normal life.
I would think that's, I don't know what the statistics are. I said this in my column. I'm like, I'm guessing 90 to 95% of people that are in an abusive relationship don't leave after the first hit. I mean, that's just me throwing out a number, but we've heard the stories. Like, they're all over the place.
Yeah.
Nobody leaves after the first.
Romanticize it at all. And I've actually had some people who messaged me and they're like, I haven't seen the movie yet. I'm afraid to do it. How graphic is it? And I actually feel like they do a good job of not making it too graphic or uncomfortable. You know what happened, right? And you know it was a bad thing, but it's not like, oh God, it's not too hard to watch.
That scene, the scene that everybody knows that we're talking about, it went up to a line, but it didn't cross it in my mind. Was it uncomfortable to watch even for me, who's never even been in a situation like that? Yeah, it's cringy, but this is a very sensitive topic. So you can't, there's no way to do that unless you literally just right at the start of the scene and you know where it's headed, and then they just cut the whole thing out. They wanted to get you at least, that's why I thought it was so well done. Like I was like, they brought you to a point, and that's the point you needed to get to, and they didn't cross it, and they didn't make it so overly graphic. Now, somebody that either is currently in a relationship like that or is previously been in one, will they find it triggering? I would think so.
Well, sure. It's not like it's pleasant to watch.
Yeah.
It's more just like they don't overdo
it. Yeah. And look, and I said this after the fact. And this is just, I guess, a testament to his acting or the casting of it. And we know that abusers come in all shapes and sizes and looks, but Justin Baldoni came across to me as somebody who just had the look. I was like, he had me believing that it was realistic for someone like this to be an abuser, you know? Yeah. And it's not to say, like I said, abusers come in all shapes and sizes.
Powerful man, you know, who holds all the cards. And yeah, I know. It was amazing. It was such a good movie.
He has 0% body fat. The guy's a hunk.
God,
he really is.
He is so easy to look at.
I know. And then I think that's the appeal of the movie, because it makes, and they've all said it in interviews, like it makes you understand a little bit more, not because just he was hot, but
he's a doctor,
seemingly a guy that has it all.
Yeah.
But you're not just going to, you can be convinced, maybe it was just an accident. And he says he's never going to do it again. Like, we know that's what happens and it's why women, for the most part, obviously there's domestic violence the other way around, but it's mostly towards women that they do stay after the first or second or even third time. It's not just, because he's hot. It's just what they are bringing to the table, because and that's why the movie was so good, because everything leading up to that made you understand at least why it wasn't so easy for her to leave after the first day.
I know. I mean, both reading the book and seeing the movie, like when we first find out that he's abusive, I was like so disappointed. I was like, oh my God, I want to love this guy so much. I want to love this character. I was almost just like pissed. I'm like, God, I want to like you.
Did you know going into the book that it was about that?
No.
So you didn't even know?
No.
Okay. So that's what I mean. It's like, I don't know how anybody watches up until the first hit in the movie, which is probably, I don't know,
later on,
45 minutes in before we get that first one.
Yeah.
They build the relationship of Lily and Ryle, and you're just like, these two are, totally in love. And you could see why, she lets him, makes him wait a little bit, kind of teases him a little bit, because he even says like, look, I'm just interested in casual sex. And she's just like, no, that's not what I want. And it's just, you can see their connection.
Yeah.
And then it happens and you're like, oh, well, what is she going to do? And then obviously I've gone over this, the way they showed it. So for me, as someone who didn't read the book, I think they got the exact effect that they wanted, because when I saw the movie and the oven scene happens and then the staircase scene happens, I'm like, but wait a second, he didn't really do, like, how do we even know he hit? And it's like, oh, okay. Yeah. And it wasn't until the third scene when we see her flash back to those scenes and we see the full scene play out. We're like, oh, okay. But as me, not knowing anything, I was like, wait, did he hit her or not?
Yeah,
was it an accident or not?
Yeah, I know. It's so good. I love it. But I say that, and I just want to give caution. I'm not supporting domestic violence at all.
And I think that's
incredible.
And that's the thing. Like, look, the whole movie is, this isn't a rom-com. This isn't a chick flick. This isn't girls' night out movie. And I think that's where what I'm reading is, some people are saying all the red carpet interviews are making it seem like, hey, chick flick, Blake Lively's in it, go see it, and this hot guy are in it, go see it. It's just like, every interview that I've seen, they are very making it clear of what this movie is about. They're not surprising anybody. And I'm guessing, again, 85-90% of the people that went to go see this movie probably read the book or have an idea of what this is about going in. I don't think they're being surprised. Like,
actually, what I love about what's his name, Justin Baldoni, I don't really know him well, but his whole platform through the whole movie, and if you go to his social media, all he talks about is domestic violence and how to help survivors and how to, all that kind of stuff. So he's doing a great job. Yeah.
And he's been, every interview that I've seen with him has been very vocal about, why did you make this movie? Because there was like a bidding war And his production company, after he read the book, basically approached Colleen and said, I want to do this movie.
Yeah.
And so he won the bidding war rights to this movie. He wanted to make it. He wanted to make it how he made it. Now, this is where we get into the, what happened with post-production and all this stuff. And, I don't think we're ever going to get a true answer.
I just want I hate it. I hate it because I love this movie and this book so much. And I feel like it's tarnishing it a little bit. And it just bothers me every time I see an article come across my feed. I'm like, I just wish they would both come out with a statement or something and just put it to bed.
And, and we talked about this. The latest one was People Magazine did a, insiders say, sources on set say this runs deeper than a Blake Justin riff. The cast does not want to have anything to do with him. And I'm like, okay, well, either that has to get settled or we're not going to get a sequel, because there's no way you could do a sequel and just recast Ryle as a totally different guy because we can't have Justin.
You have to have him.
You have to have him. I think people would be I think people would rather take no sequel than sequel with someone recasting Ryle's character.
Yeah.
I mean, when you read the second book, obviously you did that somewhat recently, so it's still somewhat fresh in your mind. The second book is more about Lily and Atlas's relationship, but Ryle still plays
a very big part of it.
Yeah, still plays a role.
Yeah.
So you can't take him out of it. You couldn't cut him out of the second movie completely because that would be a complete.
There's no book without Ryle.
So when you read the second book, did you like it better than the first?
No, the first is better for sure. Okay. It does just kind of help wrap up the story and like where everyone's at. She even says in like her little thing before the book starts, she's like, I never wanted to write this book. I'm only doing it because people loved the first one so much. And I feel like I owe it to you guys to wrap up these characters.
So let me ask you this about the first book, because this is something I read that differed. The first book, I guess the ending made it seem like it was more concrete that Lily and Atlas were going to pursue a relationship, and the movie, it's a little more open-ended. They just meet in Boston and she asks him if he's single. And he says he is.
That's how the book was.
Was that's what I'm asking. Was the book was more they are definitely dating at the end of the book? Or
no, I feel like the book is like
open-ended.
They could get reconnected, but like we don't know. But then the second book literally picks up at that last scene.
And like, they take it from there to do just like
it's not like time has passed or anything. They pick it up right from that last scene.
Okay. Yeah, because the movie is just, and it almost makes it make sense as to, and I heard the same thing too, but not until recently, that she wrote the first book and she left it pretty much open-ended, but because of the fanfare the book got and the popularity of it, it was like, well, we want to see some sort of resolution. Does she end up in a love story with Atlas? Does she have a child with Atlas down the road or whatever? We need some sort of resolution to this. What happens with Ryle and all that? So I didn't realize she writes that in the beginning of the second book. Like, hey, I didn't want to do this, but I did it for you. Yeah. That's interesting.
All her books are good. Oh, I just love it.
Are any of her books or any other of her books being made into movies that you know about?
And Verity was I don't know if it's her biggest book, but it definitely had the biggest splash. It's totally different. It's a little.
What's it called?
Verity.
What's it about?
It's God. It's been a long time. I should actually read it again. I would read it again. I read that one in one day. Like you can't put it down.
Did it come out before It Ends With Us? Did she write it before or after?
Maybe.
Because It Ends With Us came out in 2016, but I guess it didn't take off until 2020.
Yeah, I probably read Verity in 2018, maybe.
Okay.
No. Probably 2021. I don't know. I'm not even going to guess, but it's good. It's darker.
Is it Verity? Let me just see when it came out.
Verity.
Oh, Verity. Let me just see. I just want to see when it came out. Verity, Colleen Hoover. Oh gosh, where does it say when the year that it came out? I'm on Amazon looking at it. Okay, that doesn't say it. I'm gonna have to almost go to Wikipedia for it. Let me just Verity. Crap. Oh wait, Verity Wikipedia. Okay.
Maybe I read it in 2021.
Oh, Verity book. because there's giving me the thing of Verity. I can't find it. I don't know why I can't find the
That's gonna drive me crazy. We got
date on the date on this thing. It's like Verity book
come out.
Where
2018.
Okay, so it came out 2 years after, but like I said, the people that I have spoken to have basically said, like, I didn't read It Ends With Us. It didn't take off until basically COVID, when everyone was home doing nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It kind of, and I don't know if it ended up being like Oprah's book club or it was a word of mouth thing or something like that, but it definitely took off during that time. But from what you remember, roughly what Verity was about,
Yeah. So it's a dark romance novel. It's this husband and wife, and the wife is seemingly in a coma, and she's a famous writer. And this gal comes that she's been writing something. And so they hire this ghostwriter to come in and kind of complete a project that she was working on because she's in this coma, but no one knows it. And it's wild. And I heard they're making it into a movie, and I like lost my mind when I found that out. It's so good. Read it. Please read it.
Is it, can you tell me this? Does she get out of the coma?
I can't tell you that.
Reality Molly can't spoil Verity for me. I could just go on Wikipedia and read the plot. Like I did for
I don't want to spoil it for anyone.
Okay. No, that's fine. I'll probably read the plot. Like, because after I watched the movie on Saturday, I was like, I want to read what Wikipedia says the plot of the book is. And that's where I also saw some of the differences.
Now I want to make sure that I'm talking about the right book, because so many of her books.
This is how far out of it I was.
She's doing an author's unfinished autobiography. Yes.
Okay. Gotcha. And this is how I don't think I had ever heard the name Colleen Hoover until this movie started making the rounds last week of, hey, it's coming out this weekend. Like, I didn't know she was like the main young adult writer that's very hot that everybody reads, that reads her stuff.
I don't really like romance books. I don't watch like romance shows or anything like that. Her books are just so good because she hooks you on page 1. Like she gets you wrapped into the story right away. And her books are really easy reads. Like you can read them super quick.
And the book, from what I read, the book starts with the rooftop conversation.
Yes.
Okay. And that is, and another reason where it differs from the movie, but it's not like the movie took you 30 minutes to get to the rooftop conversation. Right. It's within the first, I think, 10. Yeah. I mean, it's very early on. But yeah, I needed to establish, because I did not know anything about Lily and her father and all this. Clearly, when she couldn't speak at the eulogy, I realized, okay, she clearly had some issues with her father in the past.
Yeah.
And it set that up for me. And then we see him on the rooftop and he comes out and he's upset. And then all of a sudden their flirting starts, and there you go. But
I'm really happy to hear that people who haven't read the book still love the movie.
I thought it was excellent. I thought Blake Lively deserved like at least a nomination. She won't get it because they just don't give popular movies. People that are up for Best Actress and Best Actor are these people in indie films that, people that see it at the Cannes Film Festival. Popular movies don't get nominated for anything, except for maybe costume or something like that. Oh, that's something I wanted to bring up. Were you put off by the whole wardrobe thing?
It wasn't how I pictured her. But it didn't bother me as much as I know there's a lot of people who are super bothered with how she dressed. I don't think it bothered me that much. I think so much. Had I read the book freshly, I might be pissed, but time had passed. So I'd kind of moved on from what I thought of her. So,
I mean, at the dinner party, she looked hot, like in that dress.
Yeah.
It was just her everyday garb with, a floral summer dress and a jean jacket over it or something like that. It was just, but for me, I didn't care. It's Blake Lively. I don't care what him, but he was great. Here's another thing that came up. Could you have seen Brandon, the guy who plays Atlas? Could you have seen him in the role of Ryle and Ryle in the role of Atlas?
Yeah. I couldn't have seen Justin Baldoni as Ryle. Atlas. I could have seen Atlas as Ryle.
Interesting. because I couldn't have, just because he has more, like Justin's face, I guess because it's so chiseled and perfect. It's like it also just has a feature to it, almost a darker, it's like his cheeks are sunken and it just has a darker feature to it. Brandon just looks too nice. He has too nice of a face to come across as someone as abuser to me. But like we said, an abuser can look like anything. It's just,
the book does a good job of setting it up where it's like, Ryle is just like smoking hot. Like,
okay. So
you just know that.
Okay. How, and finally, I know we got to wrap up here, just out of curiosity. And I guess I don't think I'm going to go back and read the book. I feel like I know so much about it now. I don't feel like I need to read it. I've seen the movie, but I kind of want to forward to the part of the main abuse scene because I don't know how somebody, like, it's easier to watch, not easier to watch. That didn't sound good, but you know what I mean? Something like that playing out on screen versus did she in the book, when you're reading it, where you're like, did you cringe more when you're reading that scene in the book or watching it play out?
No, in the book, because there's just more details to it.
Okay. See, that, I guess that's why I want to read it. I'm like, how do you detail something like that?
But she does do a good, she gives the same impression throughout the book of like, was it an accident or was it, so you kind of have the same takeaways when you're watching the movie. Like maybe he didn't mean to do this on purpose. Maybe it was just like a gut reaction or, I don't know.
Yeah. I find that fascinating, I guess, because I'm not a reader of any of this type of stuff. I mean, the books I read are sports related or just television in general, reading about network TV and cable and all that stuff, streaming services. Those are the only books I read. And I don't read any sort of, 50 Shades of Grey, stuff like that.
Well,
like
I'm asking you to read Verity.
I should read Verity? Okay.
It will take you no time. It is so quick.
That easy, huh?
It is a book you cannot put down.
I wonder if they haven't mentioned any. I'm assuming that you said it's going to be made into a movie from what you hear.
I swear I saw an announcement that it's going to be in a movie.
And I wonder if they've already cast it. Like, can we start looking at who's going to be on it or who's going to be in it?
It's going to be in a movie. Today Show. They said it.
I got to believe that anything. I mean, she's especially after this, and I'm assuming work out whatever kinks you have with Justin and Blake. They can't. It's almost like they can't not make the sequel. They can't not make It Starts With Us, but they have to get to the bottom of what the heck is going on between these two, because it's just not going to work. And she's just, like I said, the hottest writer going right now. People want her stuff. Yeah. Probably another book that she wrote in the past is probably going to take off and be made into a movie. It's kind of how it works.
Him, that's another great one. I mean, I could go on.
What's it called?
Reminders of Him.
Oh, I'm guessing is that more of a young love type of book? Okay. Yeah. It sounds like it. That's interesting, but I'm so glad we got to talk about this, and we spent just as much time on this as we did on
Bachelorette.
On the Bachelorette. But Molly, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. So much fun to have you on. It's been a while. Like I said, I'm going to go back into my podcast
see how long it's been.
And see how long it's been. I want to say it was definitely either COVID or pre-COVID. It definitely wasn't post that. So again, thanks again for coming on. Really appreciate it, and we'll be in touch.
Sounds great.
Thanks, Molly.
Thanks.